This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, July 24th, 2023. Case file number 1208, written by Pabby. 15 minutes to destroy the universe. My friend and I gained an extra 15 minutes or so going to class one night. It was March 26, 1977. We remember the date because it turned out to be the day the Heaven's Gate cult committed mass suicide. My friend and I took a class together at a local community college, so she would come to my house at 6 p.m., hang around for a few minutes, and we'd head off to our 6:30 class. She gets to my house at 6. We watched The Simpsons until the first commercial break, as we always did, around 6:10. We leave the house, both of us remembering seeing the dashboard clock in our car showing the correct time. It was about a 15-minute drive to school. We get to school around 6:25. I hang around for a minute with a friend who's having a smoke outside, then head in. We sat down in a fairly empty room. The clock in the classroom says 6:10. 6:10? But we assume it's wrong. My friend's watch says it's nearly 6:30, as we'd expect it to be. We wait. Eventually, people start trickling in, and class starts 20 minutes later. We're wondering what the hell is going on. My friend checks her watch a little while later in class, and it is now showing the same time as the classroom clock. Once class was over, the dashboard clock in her car was the same as her watch. We have no idea what happened, and neither have really heard a good explanation from others as to how we appeared to get out of sync with everyone else. Case file number 1209, written by Malloy Delacroix, The Mysterious Midnight Melodies. Me, my brother, and a friend were camping once when I was maybe 11 or 12, way out on our 100-acre farm in small-town Kentucky. I woke up at around 1:30 or so in the morning and could faintly hear a piano being played that sounded like it was coming out of the woods about 100 yards from our campsite. There is not a house or building or anything anywhere near that spot on our farm, so naturally I think I'm just hearing things and decide to try to go back to sleep. Then my brother, who was apparently also awake, sits up and asks me if I hear a piano. We made a dash for the house and never camped out there again. Case file number 1210, written by SB206, The Leprechan Controlling Traffic. A few years back, I taught English in Copenhagen. The school was right in the center of the city, just off Straget for those that know Copenhagen. And as with most days, I was ambling towards my class one sunny afternoon. I was about 100 meters from Radhuspladsen, the Danish equivalent of Leicester Square and Times Square, when I heard someone loudly ranting. I turned around and there's a really short guy, red-faced, wearing a suit. He looks like an angry leprechaun, ranting and raving, and he's clearly in a huge hurry. I notice he has something in his hand which he's pointing towards the sky. Going by my instinct that this guy is an absolute lunatic, I'm expecting to see either a gun or a Bible. What I see is a device about the size of a 1980s mobile phone. The angry leprechaun approaches the junction. He points the device to the sky, presses a button, and the traffic lights immediately change. This was so strange, he was in a bright red suit. At first I convinced myself it must be a coincidence, but he repeats the trick 3 times, absolutely speeding along pavements and across roads. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and yet no one else on the street seemed to even notice. 3 years on, and I still can't decide if he was some Bond villain who loved gadgets, a crazy inventor, or an actual magical leprechaun. Case file number 1211, written by Valhalla's Weirdo. I survived a fatal car crash without a scratch. I was in the Boy Scouts when I was younger. The summer of '97, we were on our way back from a campout. Our modest troop was in a 15-passenger van with a U-Haul tow behind the trailer. I was in the middle seat, sitting up on my knees, talking to the person sitting behind me, my cousin, when all of a sudden, he just fell asleep, as well as the 2 kids sitting next to him. I looked down at the kid sitting next to me, and he was also asleep. Then the van was upside down, and I was thrown to the ceiling. It was right side up again, and I was slammed back into the seat. And lastly, it was upside down again, and this time it hit hard. I had glass in my mouth and felt like every bone in my body was broken, but I sat up after a minute and watched someone crawl out through the window, so I followed them. When I got out, I was in ankle-deep water. We had landed in a ditch at the base of a hill that the road was on. I couldn't see the person I had followed out of the wreckage. I climbed the hill, losing my shoe in the process, and stood in 70-mile-per-hour traffic and 2 cars slamming on their brakes to avoid me. A woman stepped out of the first car and was screaming her head off at me before she realized I was all torn up and there was a van in the ditch. Then, she immediately ran back to her car and pulled out a car phone. Later at the hospital, numerous doctors and nurses asked me to repeat this story over and over and over again. It wasn't until later that I found out everyone else was trapped in the van with broken bones and 1 kid died. I was the only person who escaped from my own power, and it didn't have a scratch on me. I still don't know who or what it was that I followed out of the broken window. Case file number 1212, written by Mika the Great. Black fog invaded our living room. My mom, brother, and I are sitting in the living room watching TV. Out of nowhere, this thick black fog, about 3 feet in the air, maybe 3 inches thick, spreads across the center of the room. We all stared at it and looked back and forth between each other, confused, and it disappeared maybe 20 seconds later. We all saw it, acknowledged that we all saw the same thing, and that it was unimaginably weird. We were robbed. Well, we assume. But they stole my pink Converse low tops, my mom's gold cross necklace, half of the money in my brother's wallet, and a few of my dad's work shirts, which say his company name on them. It was a bizarre combination of things to realize we were missing in the morning. Case file number 1213, written by Finance Wiz. Teenagers versus Eerie fog. One night, we decided to deliberately call up whatever was hanging around. We began our discussion on topics known to have the desired effect. We held this little session out on the front lawn of my friend's house. Shortly, we spotted a cloud of fog far away across the valley. Abruptly, the fog was standing like a wall mere feet away from us. "Look at this," I said, pointing at the ground. "You can see where it terminates in the grass." Then it swept over the both of us. My neck seized up, and I couldn't move or speak. I sat there helpless, wondering why my friend wasn't saying anything more. I started to panic because it felt like I was being drained and beginning to forget who I was. And just like that, it was gone. We were both stone cold sober during this little visit. The strangest thing about the whole experience to me, immediately afterward, me and my friend skulked back into the house and instinctively never spoke of it again. A response to the curious, the subjects we spoke of that seemed to cause these visitations was garden variety teenage science fiction nerd stuff. Alternate dimensions and such, you know, the sort of subject matter that immediately lessens your credibility and makes everyone assume you're high. I have had a couple of other odd experiences in my time, but those occurred to me alone and can be dismissed as a subjective hallucination. One experience that puzzled me for years I was finally able to identify as a migraine halo. This particular experience was frightening, and I chose not to mess with whatever it was. I did see this characteristic fog again and stayed the hell away from it. It was not evil or demonic, just indifferent and powerful. It checked us out and left. I cannot begin to say what the hell it was. For the record, I am science-minded and do not believe in ghosts or the afterlife. But I also believe that human science represents an extremely limited picture of the world we live in, so let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know everything yet. Bonus file written by Anonymous. The tale of a haunted purple dinosaur. My friend was explaining to me why she took sleeping pills. Apparently, when they lived in Georgia, they bought an older house, rich family, very nice home, which had some character. She claimed to find some old purple dinosaur in the crawl space while her dad was fixing some plumbing. Played with the dino for a few weeks, always slept with it in her bed, among other toys. One day she woke up to it standing on her chest in a different molding or position than when she had found it, or it had been in the past few weeks. Set it aside. Then next 3 weeks, same thing. Didn't matter if she put it on the floor, in a drawer, or anything. One day, she locked it up, couldn't sleep. Heard the drawer unlock, open, and slam shut. Slight footsteps, and it was back on her chest. She was scared, petrified. She pretended to sleep while it shifted and sat on her chest, and watched her sleep. She told her mom the next day. Her mom didn't believe her, of course, until she was allowed to lock the damn thing in their room. Same damn thing. They moved to another house after other paranormal things started happening around that house. The dino stayed at the original house, buried if I remember right, for a year and a half. One day it appeared at their new house just standing like they found it on the kitchen counter. Got rid of it for good. I think they burned it and ditched it in the river, never to be seen again. Friend has a repeating nightmare that goes away with the pills. She's older now and can't drink because of said pills. Has made numerous emergency hospital trips to find scratches on her body the hospital claims are from night terrors. Now maybe I'm just a freak about scary stories or freaking toys that talk, but that seriousness on her face and the tears that welled in her eyes, I was sold. Not sure if it's true, but I believe her. Whether I want to or not, scary crap. Kid you not, I had trouble sleeping in her current house. She was 13 when the dino thing happened. She is 10 years older now. Case file number 1214, written by Pause 1993, the day the sun was engulfed by darkness. I was outside talking to my neighbor. Suddenly, it was like someone accidentally flicked the lights off and then back on. It was dark in the middle of the day as far as I could see for just a split second. I thought it was just my brain, but then I saw my neighbor look confused as well. Then her daughter said, "What just happened?" We were all looking in opposite directions, so it was just suddenly dark everywhere. We still talk about it sometimes, no idea what it was. I spent hours on the internet trying to find answers with no success. Also, it wasn't anything like an eclipse. This lasted like a blink of an eye. Others are saying it was a plane shadow, which is really what I thought, but when I looked it up online, I learned a lot about it. Planes fly too high to leave a shadow, most of the time. I'm not saying it's impossible that it was a plane, but I looked into it extensively at the time and came to the conclusion that it wasn't. It was too long ago now for me to remember anything clearly, or even how I came to that conclusion. I am a very scientific person. I've been literally trained in how to research, and I don't believe in anything remotely supernatural. I'm just telling you what I experienced, and that I didn't find a conclusion. JTXVO, the cold room of nightmares. When I was a kid, we moved into a new house. My earliest memory was that my brother's room was always cold, but I never thought anything of it. When I got older, I moved into that room, but it wasn't cold anymore. I asked my mom why the room was so cold, and she told me that when we first moved in, my sister actually took that room, and she had a lot of nightmares. When she woke up, there were bruises up her legs and stomach. My mom would also get nightmares of a woman telling her to leave the house. She did a ritual or something, and everything stopped, including the room not being cold no more. A few years later, my sister was getting married. My grandma and 3 female cousins I never met before came to stay at our place. My mom told me that grandma did not like staying at our place because she would always get sick when she visited. My 3 cousins stayed in my sister's room, and after the second night they were here, they were really scared and said that someone was trying to open their door. They kept seeing the doorknob jiggle, and when they opened it, no one was there. They came to my room and asked if they could sleep in there, and I thought they were trying to scare me, but I played along. I slept on the floor, and they took my bunk bed, and suddenly I heard the washer turn on. The washroom was next to my room, and I went out there and turned it off. Then I went back to my room, and outside my door I heard chains dragging across the room, but when I opened the door, no one was there again. This really freaked me out because for all the years I lived there, nothing ever happened. I eventually did fall asleep. The next morning, I went to my sister's room to check things out because I was curious. When I opened the door, I saw 2 things that freaked me out. There were these faint black marks on the ceiling, like footsteps, and the windows were open. What is so scary about the window being open? Someone installed the second glass of the windows wrong, so it could only be opened from the outside. We lived on the 2nd floor, and it was impossible to open unless you had a ladder. It freaked me out for a while, and when everyone left, nothing weird happened. I talked to my mom about it afterwards, and she said that the house doesn't like new people and females. This explained why I never saw or experienced anything except for the cold room and why my grandma always got sick. After that, once in a while I was sleeping, I would sometimes hear a baby crying. I assumed it was my neighbor's baby, but never thought anything of it. When we moved out, my mom forced me to go say bye to all our neighbors, even if I never talked to them. When I said bye to the family next door that had the baby crying, I asked how the baby was doing, and they said they don't have a baby. About 7 years after I moved away from the house, I went back to visit. When I went to my room, it had changed a lot and it was bigger. I asked the current owner about why it was bigger, and they said that the closet that used to be in my room had a hidden space behind it, making the closet twice the size. I asked them if they found anything in there, and they said no. I don't know if that had anything to do with all the weird stuff I saw, but it was just another weird thing I learned about the house years later. It was a really strange place. Case file number 1215, written by Man-Like Realities. A mysterious feline observed the impossible. When I was 9 years old, my best friend and I were crossing a busy street on the way home from school. Normally we were careful, but I was distracted by a black cat following us down the road. We stopped and she bent down to pat him while I turned around to cross the street, not thinking to look both ways. A silver car was directly to my right, about to hit me. I froze up, like a deer in headlights. My friend was screaming. Then suddenly, it was on my left. It didn't swerve, wasn't in another lane. The car was just suddenly on my other side, speeding away. I ran across the rest of the road and my friend asked how I had passed through the car. Everything looked a bit strange. Her shape was fuzzy and doubled. It was a clear day and the sun was shining even though it had been overcast and windy on the other side of the road. When I glanced back, the black cat was staring at me from the other side. Then he just strolled away. I know it was an optical illusion and I had probably just missed the car by a fraction of a second and was just rattled later. I thought about it for years afterwards though. Case file number 1216, written by Plastic Fanny Tastic. Dreams as a bridge to the other world. 2 days after one of my closest, dearest friends died. We were semi-expecting it after he was in a terrible accident. I fell asleep in the library at school. This was after a horrific couple of days trying to process everything and function normally. I was massively sleep deprived. I placed my head in my arms on the library desk and I woke up there, and there he was beside me. It was a scenario that had happened so many times, us revising and hanging out in the library together, whispered jokes and banter, that it didn't feel strange at all. We stood up and wandered around, watched one librarian putting books away on shelves. There was a girl reading a book sitting on the floor with sickly bright yellow socks. My friend made some silly dad joke about them being too loud for the library. We chatted in low voices about nothing much, the usual chit-chat, and then went back to the desks. I woke up and he was gone, of course. I was startled but weirdly euphoric. I went over the same set of shelves and had déjà vu, saw the same librarian putting away the books and the same girl with the yellow socks still there sat on the floor reading. I swear to this day I hadn't seen them before I went to sleep. I like to think it was his way of saying goodbye. It helped me immensely, even though I know it was probably just a dream. But the socks thing has always stuck with me, and anytime I see a pair of loud yellow socks, not very often, I think of him and our final chat. Bonus file written by, not the sharks from Jaws, Confronting the Gray-Skinned Monster. I had a living room in my parents' 2-story house that connected to stairs leading to the second floor of the house. You could see completely down the hall on the second floor from the couch in the living room. One time, my family went away on vacation, so I had my cousin come over while I house sat for them. I'd been alone in this house for a couple of days now, and I just really wanted company. We're sitting on this couch playing Xbox or something. The stairs leading to the second floor are almost out of vision. At the very top of the stairs on the left is a doorway leading to a bathroom and nothing else. We were up pretty late, gaming, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw a gray face lean out and stare at me for a split second. I didn't budge, I just barely noticed it. But as soon as I did, It was gone. I hadn't snapped to look at it, nor did I say anything. I just continued gaming for about 3 seconds until my cousin said, "Did you just see that?" As soon as our eyes connected, we both knew we saw the same thing. The second my cousin said that, I felt my heart sink. It scared the crap out of me to have him pretty much confirm what I saw, but brushed off. I had immediately assumed it was just one of those blurs or darting shadows you get in the corner of your eye at times. The creepiest part is that it slid out as if it was lying on the floor. Whatever it was, its head was at the level with the top of the steps, right at the bottom of the bathroom door frame. It just sorta slid out, stared, then slid back. Again, I just saw it from the corner of my eyes, but it appeared to be gray skin with black hair from our combined description. We went upstairs and checked the whole bathroom, including the insides of luggage bags in the closet. We never found anything. To this day, I still can't have a door in my house open. I'm afraid I'll be looking down the hall and some gray-skinned creature will just lean half its face out to silently stare at me and then vanish. To all the people saying it was a raccoon or something, you think exactly like me, using that as an excuse to go make sure the bathroom is clear. We both knew it was a lie, but we both would have felt safer getting attacked by a raccoon at that point. That's why we checked every single bag in the closet. Whatever it was, we had it trapped in the bathroom. It had nowhere to go. Whatever it was, it disappeared without a trace. Case file number 1217, written by AAA 1374. A heartwarming story of comfort and release. When I was about 11, we took in a dog for somebody who was very old. He wasn't in great health anymore, but we were supposed to be his final happy home since we lived out in the middle of nowhere. We had him for about a year when one night I just randomly decided to go outside to sit with him and pet him. I sat outside and laid down on him. He was a big dog, for probably over an hour, even though it was a pretty chilly winter night. Before anyone thinks we were just leaving him out in crazy cold temperatures, he refused to go indoors, and we kept a space heater in a sheltered area he would lay down in. I don't know what possessed me to say it, but I gave him a big hug right before I went inside and told him it was okay to go. The next morning, my mom woke me up to tell me that he had passed away in the night. I helped her move his body to somewhere not out in the middle of the open so the owner could come say their final goodbye, and that was it. Honestly, I still don't understand how I knew, but I think I just empathized with his pain and told him that it was okay to let go and not have to keep living for us. Case file number 1218, written by Top Independence 81, Mom and Niece from Another Realm. So, 4 or 5 years ago, I stepped out to walk my 2 dogs. My mom, who at the time drove a white BMW, had left for work very early that morning and was about 1 hour away. I lived on the main road in town, so people walked past my house all the time. I walk out to the sidewalk, and as I'm walking, I see who I think are my mom and my niece coming towards me. They say good morning, and my mom pulls out her car keys and gets my niece into the back seat of a white BMW sedan. I wave, and my mom goes, "I'll see you tonight. Love you." I just stared in shock. I called my mom and asked her where she was, and lo and behold, she was at work. I didn't need to call my niece because at the time she lived 1,700 miles away in Arkansas. I told my mom about this and she said it's super creepy and it's so unsettling. Creepy file number 102, written by Void Zen. Say hi to my poltergeist, Edgar. 15 years old. I was taking a shower at home. The rest of my family was out and it was around 9:30 at night, I believe. Anyway, I hear someone knock on the bathroom door while I'm showering, so I call out, "I'll be out in a sec," thinking it's just my dad or one of my brothers getting home. There was silence for a few moments, and then knocking again, only this time it was pounding, like someone was nagging on it with their fists, trying to break it down barehanded. It was a little creepy, but my dad always loved to prank us, so I didn't think too much of it. I decided to get a towel around me and see what the hell his problem was anyway, but when I opened the door, no one was there. The house was locked up, no open windows, no cars in the driveway. I checked every floor, every room. No one else was home. That was the first occurrence. The weird happenings continued in smaller ways until we moved out of that house, to the point that we imagined it to be some sort of poltergeist and named them Edgar. Creepy file number 103, written by Scub Surf, A Hitchhiker's Journey to Justice. This actually happened to me, so I'm going to be a little vague for the sake of privacy. I have never been one to give much of a crap about things, so I used to give hitchhikers and strangers rides if it looked like they could use it. One day, I'm in my driveway washing my car before I leave for a class at college, and I see a sketchy-looking guy walking down my street. I don't live in the best neighborhood, and there are several bad neighborhoods pretty close by, so being wary isn't unwarranted. He was wearing weird clothes. They looked like cheap, badly cleaned dress clothes. A white button-up shirt, sleeves unbuttoned, black wrinkled slacks, and a scuffed, old battered black briefcase. He had a shaved head and looked scrawny, like he had been starving somewhere. When he got nearby, he asked if I could give him a lift, and I got a weird vibe from him. I asked where he needed to go, and he said somewhere vague and told me he would give me directions and it wasn't far. Asked me if I would stop at the local liquor store. I do, and he gets a beer and some cigarettes and offers me both, but I decline, then take him to his destination. On the way there, he explains that today was his first day out of jail after having served 3 years. I didn't know what to say, so I congratulated him, and he thanked me and swigged his beer. Destination was a well-known hangout for gang members right on the edge of an especially bad neighborhood. I pull in and drop him off, and he thanks me again and leaves. Now, about 5 years later, I see him again. Same guy, impossible to mistake him. He still looked the same, only like he had been fed better, less scrawny. He was on the witness stand at a murder trial, a murder that took place at the very place I dropped him off at about 3 weeks later. Chances are good that he stayed there from the time I dropped him off and never left. He testified against the people who did the murder. They were gang members, part of a gang he was a member of before he went to jail. He had lived in hiding since the trial. Here's the crazy part. The person murdered would have been a member of my family through marriage if he hadn't have been murdered. He was the only person to testify against them. I had goosebumps during the entire trial the day he testified. What a small world. Case notes for file 1208. 15 minutes to destroy the universe. That's exactly what it was. You and your friend were caught in a kind of distorted pocket of time, and it may have even reset the original universe. And no one really would know, because if you think about it, like in a video game MMORPG where there's different servers, if the people in the server are moved to a different one in real time, not having to log out, or if they have to log out, they wouldn't be consciously aware of that time, could represent why everything wasn't in sync, and it was reinstated as the process went on. Your watch didn't match all other time. It's just that you two, for some reason, were aware of the transfer. So the original universe had to be wiped for some reason. Maybe the server host in the real world was malfunctioning, so they had to move everyone over. I think that explains a lot. Because otherwise, I don't think it can be a purely time anomaly, because nothing I know of, besides, time is relative, but there's only two things that can alter the flow of time for a person given its own reference frame, and that would be extreme speed or extreme gravity. And if somehow there was some distortion in that local area, it should affect everyone. There shouldn't be a way where it couldn't affect everyone, because, if you're at extreme speed, everyone is. And if a black hole is nearby, well, everyone is affected by it. So this is the pathway I explain it, where it makes sense. It's just a universal transfer for everyone. Think quantum immortality, but worldwide. In fact, universe-wide. If aliens are around too, they got transferred over as well. Gotta find them and compare notes. Case notes, file 1209. The Mysterious Midnight Melodies. To be honest, I'm surprised there aren't more accounts of spirits playing musical instruments, because it's similar to their own essence. Music is just a repeating pattern or sequence that we can find soothing or energetic. Spirits linger and repeat whatever traumatic or potent event binds them to this plane. So my guess, at the end of that song, something very wrong happened. So it's a good thing that you left quickly, because who knows, maybe it would just be a gigantic scream as the spirit relives what happened to it. Something like that. Case notes of file 1210. The Leprechan controlling traffic? This is so interesting, because the original incarnation of leprechauns had them adorned in red attire, not green. And I guess Irish associated with green, that's how it evolved, but yeah, of course they're short and mischievous, sometimes even to the extent of malevolence. As far as controlling traffic lights, well, there is real technology that can do that, assuming they have the ability to hide themselves to most people. Then this may have been a valid sighting, and leprechauns aren't entirely magical besides being able to hide themselves. They could use a device like any other human could. Or it was just a very strange person pretending to be a leprechaun, which would also be bizarre, but who knows? Why no one else saw him, I don't know. Case notes of file 1211. I survived a fatal car crash without a scratch. So this feels like a guardian angel event, where the first sign being that everyone else fell asleep and you noticed that before the crash a few seconds before. It's conceivable that if guardian angels exist, and they can save people, maybe they can't save everyone, or maybe they're assigned a specific person and they can't help anyone else, just their person. Raises questions of why some people have them and some don't. I don't know about that. But maybe if they're unable to save other people, the next best thing to do is prevent them from experiencing any pain or fear at first. So it'd be like dying in your sleep. You'd never even know. Before the crash, they just fall asleep and then they're gone. Or at least, in this case, only one of them died. All the other kids were prevented from having extreme trauma, from being awake and conscious as it happened, because I'm sure you didn't feel good about that. And especially coupled with quantum immortality, there'd be no fear, no traumatic memory for the one that died. In the new universe, it just emerges probably similar to you, which is by far the worst aspect to quantum immortality. To remember your own death is just vomit-inducing. And then Guardian Angel, because you saw someone leaving the van, that was your Guardian Angel, just manifesting as another kid to make you feel secure. And now time for the quote of the day. Once you can accept the universe as matter expanding into nothing that is something, wearing stripes with plaid comes easy. Albert Einstein. Nothing too much to this quote besides the universe is crazy, expanding into nothing that is somehow something after the fact. And I like plaid. I mean, I have this little cardigan that I'm wearing now, which is my go-to. I like plaid. I like checkered shirts. I like the Dean attire in Supernatural. He has his plaid shirts, his checkered lumberjack shirts. They have seasonal quality. And whenever I look at it, I just think fall or winter, which is where I want to be all the time. Although it's mainly for the plaid, the stripes are just an afterthought. Case notes for file 1212. Black fog invaded our living room. Yeah, today is just a foggy story day. What else can you say? There is an essence to fog that is mysterious in of itself. Even if there's no other entity there, I mean, this almost sounds like just a robbery where someone blew in smoke to distract you and then robbed you. It's very odd. But I do think there are entities that are capable of manipulating fog, which really is just condensation from the atmosphere. It's water vapor, more or less. It's clouds on the ground. The fact that it was black, though, is very odd. Maybe it really was just a human manipulating that to make you, it's like a magician's trick almost. But no matter if it's human or supernatural, it's very weird. And I'm glad I don't experience that. Reminds me too much of The Mist. Case notes of file 1213. Teenagers versus Eerie fog. Sounds like an entity surrounding your home in particular. The fog is just the vehicle, not the entity itself. This isn't replicated by anyone else, since millions of teenagers discuss supernatural stories, aliens, etc., dimensions on their front lawns. Location dependent, feeling a presence. I had read this the other day, and it's a being called Faith Fiada, Old Irish, Faith Fiada, etc., etc. It's a magical mist or veil in Irish mythology, which members of the Tuatha De Danann used to enshroud themselves, rendering their presence invisible to human eyesight. Faith denotes the mist in particular, and Fiada originally meant knower, then came to mean lord or master possessor. But the fog itself isn't what's real or the entity. It's not the sentient being. It's just a mechanism. It's like an ability cast in a video game almost, which is kind of neat, and I think that's the case. There's multiple stories of people encountering even monsters, and I think it's the ability to manipulate perception. The fog is maybe the vehicle or mechanism to combine human sentience with their own spirit. So it's like you need an emulsifier to combine water and oil. In this case, the fog acts as some sort of binding mechanism. Okay, so notes for the bonus file. The tale of a haunted purple dinosaur. So possessed objects, or maybe cursed, but I think invoked to manifest a fragment of a spirit, and a spirit is but a fragment of the original person's soul that passed away. So it wouldn't have much energy tethered to it, but enough to bring it back each time it was tossed away, even buried underneath the earth. My God, imagine that. Just, you're there, you set up a camera on the ground where you dug this grave for the dino toy that's possessed, and you see it digging itself out. What a sight that would be, my goodness. Would send shivers down my spine, that's for sure. And then it was actually scratching her. Well, maybe that really was just night terrors and she was scratching herself from the trauma of the, and I mean, I don't even say that lightly. I mean, that would be traumatic to have a dino toy watching you and always on you as you awake. What the hell? How can you recover from that? Could never fall asleep again. And it's interesting that the fire seemed to have purged it. There's more evidence that it was a spirit tethered to it. Fire is the cleansing mechanism for the mortal realm. It purges everything. I guess with salt too, if you go into that lore. But yeah, fire itself I think is the key. And now time for the quote of the day. But Dumbledore says he doesn't care what they do, as long as they don't take him off the chocolate frog cards. J.K. Rowling. If I was Dumbledore, I would want to remain on the chocolate frog cards as well. Mainly because I could literally eat a version of myself as a frog. And there would be a frog associated with my own being. I mean, I'm not really a frog kind of guy, but there is a kind of legacy, I guess you could say, to be on candy. Maybe not immortal, but candified immortal. It's the next best thing. Get some jelly beans that play a story with my voice as you open the box or something. That would be a bit odd, but I'll go with it. Case notes are file 1214. The day the sun was engulfed by darkness. It is confusing that people would suggest an eclipse. A plane more likely because how quickly it's crossing through the sun, at least from an angle, but it would be a tiny dot at the cruising altitude. You wouldn't even really notice it, unless it was really low, but then you would have heard it. So if it was low enough to cause it, you would have heard it, and if it was high enough to not hear it, you wouldn't have seen it. So it couldn't have been a plane, and obviously it couldn't be the moon. The moon just doesn't fly by the sun in a split second, and then it's gone. Not at all how an eclipse works. So it's neither of those things. Also, lunar eclipses can be predicted to precise minutes, days at least, months in advance. In fact, there's a story about Columbus using his knowledge of celestial bodies to predict the March 1504 lunar eclipse. Apparently, Christopher Columbus induced the inhabitants of Jamaica to continue provisioning him and his hungry men, successfully intimidating them by correctly predicting a total lunar eclipse. So of course the Jamaicans had no knowledge of celestial bodies in space, and thought he was a god, or rather attuned to his god's powers, an easy way to swindle them of food and other provisions. Despicable, yes, but goes to show you how true the adage of knowledge being power really is. In this case, the sun flickering out for a split second is a localized phenomenon. It doesn't happen to a widespread populace, or there'd be news stories about it, a lot of attention in general. When it happens, it's a very local cluster, and in my opinion, it's due to a reset of that localized area's server cluster. In effect, rebooting the servers, which to us looks like a small blip in processing, half a second. Most people report lacking any sound in that second of darkness too, which is more evidence of this theory. It's a total reset, all senses. You basically don't exist for that split second. Crazy. Case notes for the bonus file. The cold room of nightmares. I'm convinced that spirits don't innately make a room feel cold. That only happens when the spirit is low on energy and requires more to sustain itself. I mean, what is heat? Molecules zipping about in random directions, bumping into stuff is the transfer process of heat, at least one of them anyhow. You feel cold because the very room is being drained of motion, of life force. Energy is just the ability to do work or to move around. Or more precisely, to change your inertia. If you're in space, nothing's interacting with you, so you just keep on going, but you get the gist of it. Also, it would make sense living in such an environment, perpetually being drained, would lead to more sickness or illness. The body is weakened. It's also a way for a spirit to specifically target certain people, in this case females, and drain them, make them feel uneasy by just taking the energy away. I think there were true horrors conducted on people who lived in that home, specifically to women. Acts of malice we best not even imagine. The only good news is, if my theory is true, spirits eventually do fade away, even ones with anger in their hearts. Everything needs energy to do work, regardless of what dimension you're in. So without it, eventually the spirit just fades away, like ripples on a pond. Eventually the wavelength is 0. And now time for the quote of the day. The only thing that saves us from the bureaucracy is inefficiency. An efficient bureaucracy is the greatest threat to liberty. Eugene McCarthy. Bureaucracy has this effect where it's cold and unmovable. It's not about the individual. It's not about what's actually going on to people. It's about the macro level scale of things and dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and not being liable for anything. It's about removing accountability, in a certain sense of framing it. And it's why it's so dangerous. If it's government or large corporations, whatever it is, there's no way to air your grievances. Would be the best categorization, I think. Case notes for file 1215. A mysterious feline observed the impossible. I like the idea that the cat transferred one of its 9 lives to you. But no, more likely you just borrowed from the infinite pool of resets we all have. In that new universe, you really did miss the car by an inch. In the first one, you weren't so lucky. What's more interesting about this story is the cat looking at you afterwards. Makes me wonder. Cats are supposedly creatures of exceptionally high perceptive ability. I wonder if they can perceive soul transfers, like a wisp of smoky energy flowing into a new body. It saw exactly what happened. Then moved on because it needs to find dinner, of course. And if a cat can see that, then it probably sees it all the time. It's not a rare occurrence. Souls are flicking in and out of bodies all over the place. Case notes for file 1216. Dreams as a bridge to the other world. So when we dream, we access a new world, including the in-between, where soul fragments reside, in my theory. It's rare that these souls break through the membrane into our perceived dimension, and when they do, we witness them as ghosts. In this dream place, the subconscious is still intermingled with the soul and pushes it into our conscious mind, taking in details that it otherwise, you wouldn't have. The surroundings, the librarian, the girl with the yellow socks, all that's happening around you. It's using the soul almost like an extended periscope on a submarine, piercing between two worlds of water and air, of life and death, and gathering information to be brought back down to the command center of your mind. This is how you witnessed events and details in a dream that really existed and happened when you woke up. Makes my jaw drop to the floor every time I think about this. The real question then is, was it really your friend there, or was it just your dream? You were stretching your soul, your friend wasn't really there, that was just your mind making you at ease. But everything else really was there and happening, and that's how you knew about the girl and the librarian and so on. I like to think that your friend was there though, just saying his final goodbye. Case notes for the bonus file. Confronting the gray-skinned monster. Without knowing someone else saw the monster too, you'd have gone back to gaming and likely never thought of this again. Stocked tightly in the back recesses of your mind, a memory of things that you just thought was a blur in the corner of your eye. Multiple witnesses truly invokes fear though, because you know it wasn't a trick of the mind. Or if it was, something forced that illusion onto both of your conscious perceptions. Why and for what? I really couldn't say. And no, I don't think this was an actual little gray alien, as much as I want it to be, sadly. And now time for the quote of the day. You don't stop laughing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop laughing. Michael Pritchard. This is one of those quotes that you just have to stop and think and appreciate the truth of it. I think growing old, obviously there's the biological age, but I think this is referring to the mindset. As people grow old, oftentimes they become more grumpy, more serious, and nothing wrong with being serious, but I think you need that balance of humor and lightheartedness. Because if not, you really are allowing yourself to grow old in the sense of not appreciating the finer and simple things of life. Never lose the pleasure of simplicity. A good meal, a good joke, a good movie, a good laugh with friends. That's what life is all about. Case notes for file 1217. A heartwarming story of comfort and release. Man, I shed a tear while reading this short account. We really don't deserve dogs, do we? They'll hang out in excruciating pain as their duty to their family. I gave Mr. Ben a hug after recording this story. Not to have him pass on, of course, just because he deserves it. He's still a puppy, really. Doesn't matter that he's chaos incarnate sometimes. Love transcends that. He can have his chaos, that's okay. It's also clear that dogs are damned smart. He knew what you meant, that you gave him permission to move on. Duty fulfilled. That's so beautiful. Sad, but beautiful. Case notes for file 1218. Mom and niece from another realm. So the distance factor here is the real anomaly. The rest is repeated echoes of souls. Even when still alive, we can conjure up what most would consider to be a ghost. Think about what happens when you pass away and move on to a new universe after death. Sometimes people leave fragments or imprints of their souls behind in their departed universe. So who's to say that this only happens on death? Why couldn't these imprints occur temporarily even when we're still alive? It would go a long way to solve the mystery of the doppelganger sightings, where people are seen in multiple places simultaneously, at great distances where there's no chance they could be in both places. Souls aren't limited by space-time like we are, just souls out for a voyage. It does really make you wonder, how much can souls interact in the physical realm? Because in this case, your mom got in the car and actually drove off. Can a soul even manifest real matter? Now that's a question. That would mean we have far more power over the material world than we can even possibly comprehend. Case notes for the creepy file number 102. Say hi to my poltergeist, Edgar. I'm not certain this is a poltergeist, but I wouldn't rule it out. As you mentioned, it feels more like an unsettling prank than anyone or anything meaning you true harm. But I would have been absolutely freaked out. Another time having a dog comes in handy, that's for sure. Protect me from Edgar. Case notes for the creepy file number 103. A hitchhiker's journey to justice. So how threads can loosely connect like that never ceases to amaze me. Indeed, it's a small world. A potential member of your family, if not for the murder that happened at a place you decided to give a random hitchhiker a ride to, just wow. Also goes to show you that rehabilitation is possible. I think it requires a certain spark to be inside a person. Others don't have it. Bad stuff happens to them, they harden, and never question the actions they take after that. Requires a will and ability to introspect. Props to the disheveled man out of prison for doing the right thing, at least one good act. It really does matter. And now time for the movie of the day. The Abyss. 12th of October, 1989. So this is yet another underwater action movie. Involves, and mystery as well, it involves plenty of tense scenes, starting off with a disaster on a nuclear submarine. What caused its crash? Why did it sink? What's at the bottom of the Great Abyss? I will say, this movie gives me all the right vibes of mystery, while also being casted perfectly. And I think so many of these classic movies are just casted right, and the casting is key. Stars Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. A fantastic duo with chemistry strong enough to grip me and pull me into the movie. And is that not the hallmark of a great movie? To be sufficiently entertained and immersed that you forget anything else exists but the story being told. A lot of people have ADHD these days, and I think classics are a good remedy for that, where you can sit down and you're so gripped by what you're watching that who needs a phone? Just the phone doesn't exist. Just focus on one thing. And that's what I got from this, even on a rewatch. Though the first time I saw this movie was decades ago, when I was maybe 8. My dad let me watch it when maybe I was a bit too young for it, but hey, I have that memory, and it's a great movie. And there's not like a lot of gore or anything, but it's still pretty intense. So be advised, but be excited. Watch it if you haven't. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.